Welcome to this week's 2-Minute Warning interview. On this series, we dive into the topics related to the energy transition and broader sustainability goals. We welcome expert and industry leaders from the Middle East and globally to get their opinions on the different pathways to net zero and recommendations to achieve these targets. So today, I am glad to have Ms. Mariam Al-Mansouri with us, General Manager at Rebound Global Recycled Plastic Exchange. So Mariam, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us.
Of course, thank you, Leila.
Thank you. So to start off the conversation, I kind of wanted to, before going to your unique solution that you're going to talk to us about at Rebound Global Recycled Plastic Exchange, the problem behind it and the concept of why you decided to launch this new platform. So the problem of plastic pollution, for decades, we've heard about the issues related to single-use plastics and the effects it has on our environment that are unfortunately extremely harmful. So I kind of wanted to get your first initial thoughts on that, the importance of the topic and the importance of recycling, plastic in particular, yeah.
So Leila, if I can just emphasize on what you said regarding plastic pollution always being a topic that we knew is a problem and is harmful to our environment. However, this conversation started becoming more prominent, or let's say got the spotlight effect further post-COVID. So after, we were all on lockdown and we started realizing that the single-use plastics use and demand increased because of the way it was preserving food, deliveries, medicine, vaccinations, etc. We started realizing that the global infrastructure for plastics recycling is not complete on a domestic scale. Mm-hmm. So part of why plastic pollution exists is not because plastics are harmful or they're bad or from the start we shouldn't produce it. Rather, the collection methods and how we deal with plastics after we're done with using them. So pollution goes into landfills, into oceans, marine life, and we see how the ecosystem has degraded from that point. So again, when it comes to the issue of plastic pollution or where it comes from, in my opinion, it's because we do not have the correct infrastructures on a domestic scale yet at a capacity that can absorb what we produce in-house. And therefore, we aim through Rebound Plastic Exchange to provide that global circularity for plastics.
Amazing. And so you just touched upon kind of this, one of the solutions that you guys are bringing. So if you could talk to us a bit more about the platform and what you aim to do. So briefly, it's a trading platform for plastic feedstock. Can you tell us more about the solution, the unique solution that you guys are providing?
Sure. So Rebound Plastic Exchange aims to be part of the solution to plastic pollution through providing a marketplace to trade recycled plastics in all forms, so bales, flakes, and pellets. Now, the way that the trades would happen on the exchange is all of our traders or members, so buyers and sellers, would be verified. And therefore, we know exactly who we're dealing with and who the players are on this market. This brings in trust and the verification of the bodies or entities that are on this exchange. When it comes to the materials that will be traded on the exchange, we bring in quality assurance. This is done through our unique certification protocol, which enhances, or let's say facilitates, elements such as the specifics of plastics and its technicalities and the different families of plastics and their types. It comes to also bringing in that quality assurance in terms of creating a global common language through the specification sheets on Rebound to ensure that what the buyer and the seller are agreeing upon is the same understanding, whether they're in different countries or in neighboring countries. Because today, this industry has different languages based on different regions. Through Rebound, because we're a global marketplace, we created a global language. And so what we're doing as well is we realized over the past couple of years that there's a lot of pain points, or let's say fragmentations in the global supply chain when it comes to plastics, from production to recycling and reusing and implementing in PCR products. And so the Rebound Plastic Exchange bridges the global supply chain that is currently fragmented.
That's amazing. And it sounds like a unique and wonderful solution to this problem. You mentioned collection right before. I wanted to touch upon that topic, because in a lot of cases, we don't know how it's being collected. How do you do it once it's being collected? So could you touch upon that aspect in terms of logistics? How are you guys tackling that issue of collecting the waste?
So the Rebound Plastic Exchange is actually B2B. So we deal business to business. It is not a B2C. Therefore, the way we've built our business model is to not step on anyone's toes. There are today many B2C collectors, so businesses that pull up with whether it's recycling bins or trucks that take the consumer used products and then deliver them to the facilities. The Rebound Plastic Exchange starts at the aggregator level. But if you ask about collections and how plastics are being dealt with, there's tremendous investment opportunities and also business opportunities for collection as a whole. Today, different countries are on different levels. If we look at Germany, for instance, they take collection and separation of plastics as a rule from the household. There is lack of education and awareness in other countries and even in different regions regarding how do we treat our plastic bottle or our plastic bag. How do we separate, even when it comes to the pizza cardboard that we order for takeout? There's a specific mechanism that individuals can start from the house to implement when it comes to recycling that helps the collection businesses and the recycling businesses pick it up from there and thus have a better financial revenue or return on the recyclable products that they put onto the exchange.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned the point of lack of education, and we'll get into that later, because I feel like the individual is at the individual level in this topic is so important, because it starts with us going to the supermarket and using our plastic bags, or us drinking from our plastic bottles and not putting it in the right bin. So we're going to touch upon that topic a bit later. Before that, I wanted to see, so you talk about this global aspect. I also wanted to get your thoughts on the region in the Middle East, so where we're currently sitting. What do you think, is there a specific aspect in the Middle East that you have thoughts on? Where do you see the demand coming from somewhere? Is there a market that already exists in the Middle East? So kind of having your view on the region specifically also.
So when it comes to the Middle East, or let's also say the GCC as a region, and also what we're good at, which is, many of our countries have strong petrochemical industries, production of plastics, and many of these companies are even picking up on the innovative tools and solutions to reduce their carbon footprint or the greenhouse gas emissions, etc. My view on the Middle East is that, we consume a lot of plastic on a day-to-day life, maybe more than other regions in the world. And so, mainly, and this comes from the lifestyle, of course, we have much more deliveries today than we did 3 years ago due to the applications that rose out of the pandemic. We depend on fresh produce a lot, and so therefore more plastic bags used when we shop for our tomatoes or groceries in our countries. So the marketplace, or let's say the demand, there is currently small demands pulling out in the Middle East to introduce recyclable material in their second life products from different brands. And so this on its own shapes an opportunity for Rebound and the market within. So if you ask me about the GCC, I think when it comes to Rebound Plastic Exchange, because we're global, we can also facilitate trades coming out from the GCC to different countries, depending on the manufacturing industry and recycling facilities and capabilities that we have within the region, and how these business owners can incentivize financial business opportunities through the Rebound Plastic Exchange to trade these plastics or forms to meet the commitments of the big brands and business owners that want to introduce PCR at a higher percentage level in their products than the percentages that we're currently seeing.
Yeah, and you mentioned also the aspect of common standards and kind of having this agreement on one standard globally. And there's also the aspect of pricing that I kind of wanted to bring up when we're talking about trading, whether it's pricing or standard, it's key features to that. Could you talk to us a bit about that and your positioning on that?
Sure. So because if I can just first address the specifications, or let's say the common global language, the Rebound Plastic Exchange has put together its own specification sheets, which we've built in collaboration with our technical partners and also some of the environmental law firms, in order to ensure that all trades on the Rebound Plastic Exchange is regulatory compliant. And it's within the Basel Amendment compliancy levels and frameworks. Because today, every action we do as an individual or as a private business or company have the opposite end of government compliances and ensuring that whatever we do is legal, or let's say has a standard to it. Because the plastics market has been previously very regionalized, or let's say within one country or within two countries, there are only a few specification sheets within these countries that they operate in or within. This has caused the developing countries, or let's say countries mainly in the East, to be out of the picture when it comes to capturing the feedstock and joining the trade elements or the plastic exchanges on a global scale. So when we set up Rebound, we acknowledged this and we said, okay, we will create a common global language that today buyers and sellers anywhere in the world, no matter which country they're at, if they come on the exchange and see a specific plastic listing, both the buyer and the seller have the same understanding of what this listing is, rather than, let's say, a shipment going from country A to country B, and then the buyer in country B says, this is not what I was expecting. In my country, for instance, this specification looks like this or is like this. So they abide by this common global language through the Rebound specification sheets. You mentioned pricing and the question regarding that. So the exchange will and is built in a way where the suppliers ask for the price they want. So the sellers on the exchange list their price, and then the buyers make an offer in terms of purchasing it. So it's not an auction and it's not a back and forth. We believe because there is a lack of price transparency through the Rebound Plastic Exchange, because the traders are able to see which material is in which country, what are the grades, and what is it priced at, this will start generating price transparency in the market directly between the buyers and the sellers, which will then allow for a common ground of competitiveness, of indexes to arise, because today there is no reference, or let's say clear reference of how plastics are priced, because good material is rare to find and collect. So there is intransparency or no transparency when it comes to that element. So through the exchange, suppliers list their price, and then buyers can offer to purchase that listing directly.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm excited to see once you guys launch how this goes, because it sounds wonderful. And you mentioned a very key point in your opening comments on that questions about developing countries and kind of this gap between developed and developing countries. And I kind of wanted to move now the conversation towards the broader kind of circular economy concept, and how I think it's critical that we kind of have this common understanding and take the opinions of everyone on this planet, because this is the threat is global, so the solution needs to be global. So now talking about the circular economy, you obviously have the aspect of recycling kind of pinned down, but I wanted to talk about the 4 R's of the circular economy: the reduce, reuse, recycle, and remove. What are your thoughts on that, and how can we kind of accelerate the implementation of the circular economy, whether it's at the GCC level, the UAE, even where we're located, or globally even? Where do you see that heading?
So I think when it comes to the 4 R's, prevention is key and being proactive. So whether you reduce your using of plastics, whether you reuse, whether you opt for, a refillable water bottle rather than a plastic one, these are all small steps towards change, which is critical and what we need. However, when it comes to circularity, these steps can only go a long way in a short-term frame. Our planet no longer can absorb or can wait for a long-term implementation or execution plan. Our solutions need to be fast and quick. So having said that, from a plastics angle and the circularity of plastics, today circularity cannot be achieved on a domestic scale. Until it takes time to build a MRF. It takes time to collect and separate. It takes time to also build capacity. And when you see the developing countries versus the developed, a bit towards even the underdeveloped, unfortunately, there is plastics everywhere. How can you capture it in an economically friendly manner where everyone benefits on a dollar scale? So financially, the full chain is rewarded by collecting this plastic and recycling it, and then collecting it, recycling it, reusing it, and then implementing it in a different product. This can only be achieved globally. Now, when I say globally, we should not put or imagine Far East to Far West. It's not like that at all. Perhaps there's a neighboring country that already has facilities that are able to absorb tons and tons of plastics to turn them from bales to flakes. And then that can then turn them from flakes to pellets. So today, the call for action really is to realize that there is demand for plastics to be collected and reused by the big brands and multinationals and certain governments as well through their circular economy policies. So the demand is there. The supply is definitely there. How can you bridge that? It's by moving plastics, because you cannot wait for every country to build its own infrastructure in-house in order to meet the equilibrium.
Yeah, and on that point, I wanted to come in here, the knowledge sharing, the importance of that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that there's enough knowledge sharing happening, whether it's through platforms, through forums? I mean, obviously COP27 is coming up soon in November, and everyone is kind of heading towards that. Do you feel like there's enough knowledge sharing and expertise happening in the industry, or do you feel like there's a lack still in that?
Well, having attended a few conferences myself, especially recently in different regions as well, when it comes to knowledge sharing, there are experts in the field. There are some papers that are being developed and also published, and projects that are being practiced on the ground regarding how can we treat plastics or even go around recycling and circularity as a whole. However, I believe that there is still a gap of knowledge of capacity building, infrastructure enhancement, and also household capacity building, because everything now, plastic pollution is caused by us. So we as individuals have caused or brought upon our planet this harmful activity or trait. We can only solve it. So we can't solve it if we don't know how to deal with it. Today, perhaps there's a certain way you should recycle your plastic bottle versus your plastic food packaging.
Yeah.
Individuals don't know that. They don't know how to do it. Not everyone. knowledge sharing on that element is not there. There are experts in the field. There are lots of technical capacity and expertise on how to deal with the plastic itself once it enters a recycling facility. However, plastic is consumed by individuals, and if the individual does not have the knowledge to act upon how to better dump this plastic rather than dumping it in a landfill or ocean, but rather to put it in the waste bin in the correct form, then we do not really achieve circularity or recycling in a proper form.
Yeah, and I think that it brings up the point of education. So now, really, we've spoken about the individual at the heart of this problem. And there's, I feel like, an education side of it that's critical, whether it's from the youngest generations all the way to the eldest generations. Do you feel like there's enough happening in that sense, enough of education, discussions around it, whether it's in terms of recycling plastic or also circular economy? There are also different practices that can be used throughout to achieve a circular economy, for example, waste management practices. Do you feel like the education is there, or not as much as it should be at this point?
In different regions, not as much as it should be. In some countries, because the parents were educated, so the children automatically are educated. Two educational pillars, or let's say facilities, that I think can be easily captured and used as a mechanism of knowledge transfer and sharing is schools and companies or businesses. Because either you're an individual that works in a company, or you're at school, or you're a parent that drops their child to school. So education can happen through these two platforms in terms of raising awareness. What is a circular economy, really? How can we be more sustainable rather than linear? How do our actions implement the consequences that the future generations would face? How to make recycling more attractive to children? How to encourage the elderly to reduce, using single-use plastic. So, for instance, Abu Dhabi and the UAE recently launched their policy regarding banning single-use plastics, which was into effect the beginning of June. So, funny enough, I'm used to tote bags, and I'm used to not having to grab a plastic bag everywhere I go. I've tried to implement this as a lifestyle, because sustainability and circularity is not an action that you sign up for. It's a
lifestyle. Yeah.
You embed it in you, you practice it on a daily level, and you're conscious when it comes to decisions of picking something up. You need to think of, will this last for long, or is it single use and I need to recycle it properly?
Yeah.
So, end of May, I showed up to our household with tote bags for a grocery shop.
I'm gonna do that.
And then, I had my father saying, "What's this for?" Like, "No, darling, I don't see myself shopping in the grocery store." And I'm like, "No, Dad, you need to." So, different age groups, different mindsets, how to make it attractive. That's the key. Yes, implementing taxes, putting in subsidies, giving in incentives is all part of the solution. However, because we need to solve this as soon as possible, or else, we'll have no fish left in the ocean, and we'll have no spaces on our land to breathe fresh air from. Trade and plastic movements need to happen.
Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of touched upon my next question already, which is regarding policies. You mentioned it a few times. Policy is extremely important, whether it's for the infrastructure, whether it's, as you said, banning single-use plastics. Do you think the policies are there, whether it's, again, UAE, regional, global? Do you think that the policies are enough there and strong enough to kind of create that shift from linear to the circular economy? I know recently there was the Global Plastics Treaty that happened in March 2022. What are your thoughts on that? Are we there yet, or do governments need to kind of push through and get us across the bridge for that?
I think when you come to talk about global governance and how policies and regulations are shaping, there needs to be more legally binding, or let's say accountabilities in each country as opposed to its industry. So perhaps there are some countries which are doing great in recycling and don't need that much of a push, but perhaps need opportunity for investment. And that's where maybe governments can start giving incentives to companies that build facilities or collections. So different countries, there's no one size fits all. We are heading there. We're not there yet, but we're close to the line, especially with the UNEA's Global Plastics Treaty. It will need 2 years to come into shape and form and put into effect. But as I said, plastics is now a hot topic and it's getting more spotlight because it's visible and its impacts are visible around us. There are challenges when it comes to regulatory frameworks and how things are being implemented, policies as well. So again, this is why we think that the Rebound Plastic Exchange will help facilitate movement in a regulatory compliant way because of how we've built the business model around it. And one thing that perhaps can come into this conversation is the COP27 and COP28. Everyone is looking forward towards these happening in the region, and this is, yes, we have and maybe till today use a lot of plastics, but you do realize that a lot of countries are now picking up on environmental pledges and boosting their economy with ways of becoming cleaner and more sustainable, just like the pledge that Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed did a few days ago regarding the $50 billion pledge towards renewables and just clean energy. And it's, a moment to say that I think if there's one country that can move towards a very fast way in implementing and giving circularity that global reach, it's the UAE. And this is why Rebound is in the UAE and Abu Dhabi.
That's amazing. And you kind of brought my closing question, which was actually about COP27 and COP28. It's such an exciting time to be in the Middle East, like you said, and the UAE has been doing amazing and launching amazing initiatives, whether it's from closing Expo 2020 to leading up to COP28. And before that, we have COP27 happening in Sharm el-Sheikh. If there was to be kind of your top priority or your wish list, I guess, what would it be? What would you want to see coming out of COP27, COP28, in terms of policy making, in terms of the stakeholders that are going to be there? It's the biggest climate meeting. We always wait for that kind of key date in November. What would be your wish list for that? Whether it's recycling or broader sustainability goals?
On a broader sustainability scale, as a wish list, not just as Maryam, but also as Rebound, I think from a government perspective, I wish that there is more flexibility in adapting short-term quick solutions to be implemented by the private sector, which then gets me to my second stakeholder. Private companies need to start acting and implementing. It's no longer the time to address and speak about problems and issues. It's time to act towards change and to implement results rather than focusing on panel conversations that only address challenges. There should be conversations only about solutions and how we're going to solve the climate urgency that our planet is giving us on a daily basis.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wonderful conversation, and unfortunately, we're going to have to start wrapping up. I'm looking at time here, but thank you so much, Maryam, for sharing your expertise, the insights, and we're very excited to see what happens when you officially launch towards the end of summer, Rebound Plastic Exchange. So thank you so much, and thank you to our viewers for tuning in to this 2-minute warning interview, and excited to keep these conversations going. Don't hesitate to follow Maryam and the organization to see where they're going, and Gulf Intelligence to get different 2-minute warning interviews each week. But thank you so much, Maryam, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Leila. Thank you, everyone.